She won't confess. She won't always lie either. She'll simply shift her energy, her rhythms, her quiet patterns that most men never question until it's too late. Let me ask you, what if the truth isn't in her words, but in the silence between them, in the details most overlook? The hesitations, the subtle withdrawals, the sudden sweetness that feels just a little too controlled. A Stoic man doesn't accuse. He doesn't beg for answers. He simply sees because he's trained himself to observe, not react. Today, you'll uncover 7 silent signs a woman leaves behind when her loyalty starts to fracture. Not always out of malice, sometimes out of confusion, sometimes out of desire she can't explain or control. These are signs most men miss, because most men are busy loving with their eyes closed. But not you. You walk with presence, with awareness, with the quiet strength to see what's real even when it hurts. So if you're ready to protect your peace, not by control but by clarity, let's begin. With the first subtle signal that tells you something's no longer honest. Number 1, her kindness becomes calculated. She still smiles, still touches, still says, "I love you," but something is missing, and if you listen closely, you'll hear the silence behind her words. She used to laugh with her whole body. When she kissed you, it wasn't routine. It was revelation. It was surrender. But now it feels like a gesture, a formality, like something she does because she should not, because she feels. You can't quite put your finger on it. She still calls you babe. She still makes you dinner. She even compliments you from time to time, and yet you feel the shift. The weight behind her smile is gone. The warmth in her touch is timed, measured, almost rehearsed. And this is what most men miss. A woman rarely becomes cruel when she cheats. She becomes strangely polite, because guilt rewires her behavior. It doesn't always lead to distance. Sometimes it leads to compensation. She gives more than before, but it's not real giving. It's covering. A shield to protect a secret she hopes you'll never have the courage to confront. So she'll start showing affection in public. She'll become attentive, sometimes too attentive. And you'll think, maybe things are finally getting better, but they're not. They're just getting quieter because she doesn't want conflict. She doesn't want to be caught. She doesn't want to face what her conscience already knows. So her kindness becomes calculated mercy, not emotional connection. And if you like, most men are desperate for her affection, you'll accept it without question. You'll silence your gut feeling just to feel okay. You'll say, she's being sweet, that's all that matters. But deep down, you'll know. You'll know something has changed. Something has left the room, and it's not her body, it's her heart. Here's what Stoic men do differently. They see, they feel, but they don't chase clarity from someone who's already hiding. They don't accuse, they don't cry, they don't beg, they observe. Marcus Aurelius said, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change, for I seek the truth." The Stoic man seeks truth above comfort, even when that truth stings, even when it breaks the illusion, because he would rather face the pain of reality than live in the comfort of a lie. So when her kindness becomes artificial, when her "I love you" sounds like a script, when her attention is just a shadow of what it used to be, he doesn't argue with her. He listens to the silence. And he lets that silence lead him back to one thing, his self-respect. Because no amount of sweetness can mask the bitter aftertaste of emotional betrayal, and no amount of politeness can cover a drifting soul. She may still sleep beside you. She may still touch your hand. She may still smile when friends are around. But when her kindness is no longer born of desire, when it becomes performance, you must see it. And you must stand in it, without flinching, because the man who cannot detect false warmth is the man who gets burned by it. Number 2, she avoids eye contact in key moment. Her words may stay the same, but her eyes will start looking for places to hide. You ask her how her day was. She says good. You ask what she's thinking. She says nothing. You kiss her, and she kisses you back. But her eyes, they're never fully with you, not anymore. And you try to convince yourself that it's just stress, just distraction, just work or hormones or bad sleep. But deep down, something ancient inside you knows a woman's eyes never lie, because the feminine heart is not trained to hide things through calculation. It hides through absence. And when her soul starts drifting toward another man, emotionally, sexually, even just imaginatively, her eyes will betray what her lips try to suppress. She avoids your gaze at the dinner table. She looks at her phone while you speak. She glances at the floor when you ask a question that touches too close to the heart. Not out of guilt, but because facing your eyes means facing her split. Because her eyes once craved yours. They once searched your face like a map, looking for something that grounded her, ignited her, made her feel safe and alive all at once. But now they drift, they avoid, they become uncomfortable in silence. Not because she hates you, but because some part of her knows she's no longer fully here. And here's what most men do wrong. They start chasing the eyes. They lift her chin, ask her again and again, is everything okay? They want reassurance. They want her gaze to lock again, to feel like it did in the beginning. But in doing so, they abandon their own center. They begin to beg with their posture for something that should be freely given. A Stoic man never begs for emotional presence. He invites it. He allows it. But he never demands it, because the moment he does, he becomes smaller than the truth. And the truth is this. When a woman can no longer meet your eyes, she has either seen something in herself that she can't explain, or she's seen something in you that no longer awakens her. And in both cases, your strength is in not flinching, not folding, not trying to pull her back with pleading or pressure, but to simply notice, to honor what is, and to remain rooted in reality, even if that reality stings. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, be willing to feel the discomfort, to face what others would rather excuse, to look at her and see that she's looking elsewhere even when her body is close. Because this kind of awareness, this clarity without collapse, is rare. It's what separates boys from men, reactors from leaders, beggars from kings. So don't chase her eyes. Don't ask her to perform love. Let her silence speak. Let her eyes drift. And from that still place in you, decide what kind of woman you'll allow into your world from this moment forward. Not just someone who says the right things, but someone whose eyes, every time they meet yours, say what words never could. I see you, and I still want you. And if they don't, you walk, not with anger, not with pride, but with the quiet power of a man who would rather be alone in truth than held in a lie. Number 3, her routine suddenly shifts. It's not the lateness, not the meetings, not the new hobbies. It's how she doesn't tell you anymore, and how your presence seems less and less part of her day. It starts small, a new yoga class, a work dinner that runs late, a spontaneous outing with friends she hasn't mentioned in years. You want to be supportive, you tell yourself. She deserves her own life. And she does, but slowly, her time becomes her escape. Not a balance, not a boundary, but a barrier. Because it's not that she's busier, it's that she's less available in ways that matter. She no longer tells you where she's going, she just leaves. She no longer invites you along, she assumes you wouldn't want to come. She no longer checks in, not out of rebellion, but because you no longer feel like home. And here's the danger most men walk straight into. They normalize it, they adapt, they fear being controlling, so they say nothing. But deep down, they feel the cold air of her absence. They feel the space widening, and they tell themselves it's just a phase. But a woman pulling away in small, unspoken ways is often a woman who's already begun the emotional uncoupling. And once a woman starts building a world that doesn't include you, you're no longer her partner. You're just her cohabitant. She'll still smile, she'll still ask how your day was, she'll still laugh at your jokes. But her soul is elsewhere, and her schedule reveals it before her mouth ever does. Now understand, not every new routine means betrayal. But in a woman's emotional language, secrecy is the sign. It's not what she's doing, it's what she's hiding, what she no longer offers freely. Because once upon a time, you were the first one she told everything to. Now she tells you after, or not at all. This is where the Stoic man separates himself. He doesn't interrogate, he doesn't guilt trip, he doesn't beg for access. He simply observes. And in observing, he asks himself, not, how do I get her back? but rather, what am I allowing into my life under the name of love? Because when someone begins to build privacy with walls instead of windows, it's not independence, it's a signal that she no longer wants to be known, and the question is why. Is it boredom? Is it guilt? Is it another man, maybe? Or maybe it's simply that she no longer sees you as the man she must stay emotionally honest with. And that to the Stoic mind is the real loss not of her time, but of her reverence. Because when a woman starts adjusting her calendar not for partnership, but for personal escape, she has already begun rewriting her inner script, and you're no longer the co-author. So what do? You don't chase her back into routine. You don't ask for updates like a parent. You reclaim your own structure. You wake up earlier. You move with purpose. You dive into mission. You build a life that commands respect, not through dominance, but through direction. And as your world sharpens, you make space only for those who honor it, not hide from it, not schedule around it, but choose to move with you, not away. Because if she is drifting, and your instinct tells you it's more than just timing, trust that instinct, not to punish her, but to protect yourself. Because when a woman builds a life behind your back, she's already telling you with her absence what her mouth refuses to say. And the man who ignores that is not stoic, he is sentimental. And sentimentality in the face of slow betrayal is how strong men lose themselves in the name of loyalty that was never returned. Number 4, she becomes hypercritical over small things. She's not mad because you left the towel on the bed. She's building a case to justify the betrayal she hasn't yet confessed. You breathe the wrong way. She flinches. You forget one errand, she explodes. You speak calmly, but she hears condescension. No matter what you do, it's not enough. And so begins the slow erosion, not of love, but of your image in her mind. She no longer sees you as the man who once made her heart beat faster. She begins to see you as a burden, an obligation, a convenient excuse for why she feels disconnected, even if that disconnection started with her. But here's the hidden truth. Criticism often comes not from disappointment, but from disloyalty. Because when a woman begins to emotionally bond with another man, even just in fantasy, she must resolve the dissonance inside her. She cannot be the good woman and the betrayer at the same time. So what does she do? She finds fault in everything. In the way you dress, in the way you chew, in the way you rest your hand on her back, a gesture she once melted into, now labeled possessive. She begins to see you not as the man she outgrew, but as the man who never really understood her, who was never that attentive, who always made her feel small. And you sit there, stunned, wondering where this version of her came from, why she suddenly seems to dislike everything about you, why you feel like a guest in your own relationship. It's not you, not fully. It's the internal courtroom she's trying to win. She's defending her betrayal, conscious or subconscious, by prosecuting your imperfections. You left the light on uncaring. You forgot her favorite snack, selfish. You focused on your work, emotionally unavailable. Everything becomes ammo. And if you're not grounded, you'll start fighting back, explaining, defending, trying to prove your goodness, trying to make her see you again. But the Stoic man does not beg to be understood. He does not enter the courtroom she built in her mind. He does not defend what he knows is not a crime, because he understands. If a woman must invent reasons to disrespect you, she already made the decision. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." In other words, when she tries to provoke you, remain composed. When she twists the narrative, you hold the truth in silence. When she throws barbs, you don't bleed because you know who you are, and you don't answer to emotional distortions designed to excuse emotional betrayal. Instead, you observe. You listen without absorbing. You measure without reacting, and you ask the one question that matters: do I still choose this? With clear eyes and a steady heart. Because this isn't about the towel, or the tone, or the text you forgot to send. It's about the shift, the erosion, the hidden guilt finding cracks in your armor and blaming you for everyone. So let her speak. Let her criticize. Let her rewrite the story if she must. You don't need to control her narrative. You just need to walk in your own truth. with a presence so rooted that her storm breaks itself against your silence. That's Stoicism, not coldness, not withdrawal, but strength without defense. Because in the end, the man who stays calm under false accusation is the one who wins, not the argument, but his soul. Number 5. Her phone becomes a private world. She used to scroll beside you. Now it's always face down locked or mysteriously absent when you walk into the room. She used to laugh and show you memes, used to pass you her phone without hesitation, used to ask your opinion on texts, invite you into conversations with friends, share songs she liked, screenshots she found funny, or just moments from her life. But now her phone might as well be a vault. It's always on silent, always face down, always in her pocket or left somewhere you're not supposed to see it. You ask something simple, who just texted? She pauses, eyes dart, shrugs, just a friend. And suddenly just a friend becomes the mantra. Just a friend, just work, just someone from the gym, just a cousin you've never heard about. But Stoic men don't chase ghosts. They don't invade phones. They don't scroll through messages in the dark. They read energy, and the energy is loud. It screams in the micropauses, in the fake calm, in the subtle shift in how she holds that little glowing rectangle like it's more precious than your trust. Understand this: when a woman starts hiding her phone, she's hiding more than information. She's hiding intimacy. The phone in today's world is an extension of the soul, not because of what it contains, but because of how it connects. And when she's cheating emotionally or physically, her phone becomes the tether to her secret world. A world where you don't exist, where your presence is inconvenient, where her true emotional investments lie in digital shadows you're never allowed to enter. Now you could argue, confront, demand passwords, check call logs, ask mutual friends, but what would that make you? A man clawing at evidence while abandoning his own center. Number Stoic doesn't beg for transparency. He expects it. And if it's not given, he doesn't grovel. He withdraws presence. Because any relationship where access must be earned through suspicion is already dying. A woman in alignment, a woman in truth, will volunteer clarity, not hide behind vague excuses and digital silence. So when her phone becomes a fortress, when her screen lights up and she tilts it just out of your view, when her laughter suddenly isn't shared anymore, you don't need to dig. You already know. Epictetus wrote, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." If you believe her phone means nothing, if you convince yourself you're paranoid, you'll miss the very signs your soul is trying to alert you to. And worse, you'll stay in a place where your intuition is disrespected, your instincts are shamed, and your masculinity is slowly neutralized. The Stoic man holds the line, not by controlling her phone, but by mastering his boundary. If you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. And if that principle cannot be lived in your relationship, then no password, no promise, no performance can replace the erosion that secrecy already planted. So do not break your dignity chasing shadows in her messages. Hold your posture, watch with stillness, feel what's real, and choose from truth, not from fear of loss. Because if you lose her, but keep your clarity, you've lost nothing. But if you stay and lose your own reflection in the mirror, you've lost everything. Number 6, physical intimacy fades, but emotional distance grows deeper. It's not just that she doesn't touch you anymore, it's that when she does, her soul isn't there. She still sleeps beside you, still wears the perfume you once bought her, still lets you kiss her sometimes, but something in your gut keeps whispering, she's not here. And it's not about sex, it's not about frequency, it's not even about attraction, it's about presence. Because physical closeness without emotional connection is a kind of loneliness you can't explain to most people. It's the ache of lying next to someone and feeling less seen than when you're alone. This is what happens when emotional betrayal begins. Not always with another man, but always with a shift of devotion. Her touch becomes mechanical, her kisses brief, her hugs safe. Not passionate, not surrendered, just functional. And sometimes that hurts more than rejection, because rejection is clear, coldness is honest. But half-love, that's poison. You start wondering if you're imagining it. You ask yourself, Maybe she's just tired. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe I'm too sensitive. But here's what Stoicism teaches you. Don't ignore what your body knows, because the body doesn't lie, and yours has already detected the absence in her presence. Now she might still initiate, still hold your hand in public, still give you just enough physical attention to keep you from asking too many questions. But it feels transactional, like she's managing your suspicion, not connecting with your soul. And you remember how it used to be, when she'd melt into your chest, when she'd reach for you in sleep, when her breath would quicken the moment your fingers traced her skin. That woman isn't gone, but her devotion is. And this is where most men panic. They overcompensate, buy flowers, plan dates, initiate more, try harder, not realizing that intimacy forced is intimacy buried. A woman who's emotionally drifting won't return through pressure. She'll only feel further smothered. Because what's missing isn't activity, it's alignment. Marcus Aurelius said, "Let not your mind run on what you lack as much as on what you have already." So what do you have? You have a moment, a stillness, a signal from your own soul telling you this intimacy is no longer rooted in truth. And that gives you a choice, not to demand, not to manipulate, but to clarify. You don't ask, "Why don't you want me?" You ask yourself, "Why am I tolerating intimacy that no longer feeds my spirit?" And if the answer is fear, fear of loss, fear of loneliness, fear of confrontation, then you're not loving, you're bargaining with your dignity, with your depth, with your masculinity. The Stoic man doesn't settle for touch without soul. He doesn't cling to routine just because it's familiar. He either reawakens polarity through depth, presence, leadership, or he withdraws with honor. Because intimacy without connection is just performance. And the man who performs for love has already abandoned his throne. So pay attention to her silence, to her stiffness, to how quickly she turns away after, to how often she avoids your eyes during, and then pay attention to yourself, to how much you've dulled your instincts, softened your voice, muted your needs, all to maintain a closeness that no longer carries truth. There's nothing stoic about tolerating quiet betrayal. There's nothing strong about enduring touch that carries no devotion. So if her intimacy fades, and her heart drifts further, with each encounter you don't chase, you don't plead, you rise, you walk, and you return to the only intimacy that cannot betray you, the intimacy between you and your deepest self. Because that man, the one who knows, who feels, who sees, he deserves more than her body. He deserves her soul. Number 7, she speaks of freedom more than us. When a woman falls out of love, she doesn't always say it. She simply starts talking about independence more than intimacy. It happens slowly. She starts craving space, not in a hostile way, but in a tone that sounds almost innocent, almost empowered. She talks about traveling alone, about finding herself again, about not wanting to lose her identity in the relationship, about needing to breathe. And you, being understanding, being mature, being the man who wants to support her evolution, say, "Of course, do what you need because you think. She just needs space. She'll come back clearer." But here's what most men don't realize. When a woman starts speaking the language of freedom, she's often already rewriting the story of us. It's not that wanting freedom is wrong. It's that the tone has changed. Before she used to say, "Let's do this, we should try that, our life together." Now it's, "I just need time to figure myself out. I want to feel alive again. Maybe I've outgrown what we had." She's not talking to you. She's announcing something, not seeking partnership, but preparing an exit from emotional accountability. And here's the paradox. She might still sleep in your bed, she might still wear the ring, she might still kiss you goodnight, but her spirit has already unsubscribed from the we. She's floating somewhere outside the bond, imagining a life where she's no longer tethered to your energy, your rhythm, your name. And most men ignore this, because no one wants to believe that the woman who once whispered forever into their chest now whispers freedom into her pillow when she thinks you're asleep. But Stoic men don't cling to illusions. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." So when she starts singing the song of freedom, you don't try to mute her. You listen, carefully, not with panic, but with clarity. You ask yourself, is she expanding or escaping? Is she healing or hiding? Is she becoming more of herself or less of who we once were? And if the answer stings, you don't beg her to stay in the prison she's already resenting. You simply stop building a future with someone who no longer speaks in we. Because if her highest aspiration is detachment, you give her exactly that. Not out of spite, not to punish, but because a man who honors his energy never stays where his name is being quietly erased. You don't block her freedom, you mirror it. You return to your own path, your own stillness, your own unshakable truth. And you remember, the man who gives her freedom too easily becomes forgettable, but the man who honors his own, even in the face of her withdrawal, he is unforgettable. So don't chase the ghost of us. Don't rewrite your soul to keep hers from wandering. Let her wander, let her seek, let her build her world, even if it doesn't include you. Because if it ever truly did, she would have said we without thinking twice. Number 8. The Stoic man's response to betrayal. He doesn't explode. He doesn't beg. He doesn't shrink. He simply returns to the one thing she underestimated, his silence. You've seen the signs, the cold affection, the deflected gaze, the secrecy, the soft erosion of us. And you stand there not with clenched fists, not with desperate texts, but with something far more dangerous, awareness. Because the Stoic man does not need proof. He does not set traps. He does not scroll through messages or sniff for cologne. He already knows, not through paranoia, but through presence. The kind of presence most men lose the moment they feel unwanted, but not you. You do not respond to betrayal with drama. You respond with discipline because you know. Her betrayal is not your collapse. It's her disconnection from truth, from herself, from the bond she once claimed to cherish. And so you don't scream, you don't threaten, you don't fall to pieces. You simply watch her drift, and you let her go. Not because you don't care, but because you refuse to cling. You refuse to convince someone to love you. You refuse to participate in a lie just to avoid being alone. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who caused the injury." And so when she lies, you tell the truth. When she hides, you stand in the open. When she escapes, you become even more rooted in your path. You don't match her chaos. You deepen your stillness. And in that stillness, you reclaim your time, your energy, your attention, your soul. Because that's the real cost of betrayal. Not just a broken heart, but a distracted spirit. A spirit that starts to orbit her pain, her decisions, her absence. But the Stoic man doesn't orbit. He aligns. He ascends. He chooses clarity over connection. And if clarity means walking away, you do it, quietly, with reverence for what once was, but without attachment to what no longer is. You pack your values, your vision, your voice, and you walk like a man who refuses to bleed for someone who would not even blink at your wounds. You forgive her not to invite her back, but to release yourself. You do not hold grudges, you hold standards. And if she ever returns seeking warmth in the fire she once abandoned, you may smile, but you will not lower your flame. Because once you've tasted peace after betrayal, you will never again trade it for the illusion of love. You will be unshaken, unchaste, unapologetic, and she will feel it in every silence, every distance, every version of you that refuses to fall apart in her absence. That is Stoicism. Not coldness, but control. Not bitterness, but boundary. Not revenge, but rebirth. And in the end, she will not remember the man who cried for her. She will remember the man who knew, who saw everything, and simply chose to walk away anyway. Most men wait until it's too late to see the signs. They silence their instincts, hoping love will return. They chase clarity from lips that already kissed someone else. They argue, beg, break down, thinking if they just love harder, she'll come back. But the truth, when betrayal begins, it whispers, not in shouting matches or slammed doors, but in the smallest shifts. And the Stoic man doesn't fight the current. He doesn't dramatize the loss. He doesn't make his identity depend on the loyalty of someone else. He feels everything, but he clings to nothing. He mourns quietly and walks powerfully, because he knows betrayal is never the end. It's the invitation to rise, to remember your value, to build your mission, to stand like a mountain while others crumble like sand. If you've seen even one of these signs, don't rush. Don't retaliate, don't collapse, just breathe. And ask yourself, do I want love or do I want truth? Because the man who chooses truth, even when it burns, will never be lost for long. He may walk alone, but he walks with God, with principle, with presence. And in time, that presence will attract something purer, deeper, stronger. Not a woman who hides behind smiles, but one who sees your stillness and feels safe in it. Until then, be that man, be the one who knows. And if you found truth in this message, if it stirred something ancient in your chest, follow the path with us. Subscribe for more Stoic insight and rise with brothers who choose mastery over misery. We're not here to please, we're here to lead.